didn't want to equip them, and right now I run most of my guns without any attachments on them because they shoot the best when I'm not running them with any attachments. And this kind of sucks because before I had all these cool combinations and I'm like, oh, I know I always run the angle grip with this weapon and this one works best with a heavy barrel and stubby grip, but now there aren't any of those combinations. You don't care about your aiming down sight time as much as you do of your side-to-side recoil, then you can throw that on the weapon. No negatives whatsoever. Obviously, we need a few negatives, like, say, with the suppressor that reduces your muzzle velocity and stuff like that, but for the most part, the spread decrease could be gotten rid of completely, and we could just look at the positive effects of weapon attachment. The attachment system right now is very broken because of these negative side effects of attachments, and it would just be so much easier if
I'm not sure this message will reach you, but this is an open letter. With any luck, and with forwarding from anyone who watches it and agrees with its sentiments, this will be making its way to your sit-stand desk shortly. This video is a response to your video on fixing the broken attachment system. I feel that this video has some profound problems of its own, and I would like to bring them to attention. Let's start right there with the title. The attachment system demonstrably works. You can attach any attachment you like, and to my knowledge, all the attachment buffs and modifiers that you receive match up perfectly with the values the developer intended. It is a fully functioning system, and therefore not broken. To call the system broken would devalue the meaning of the word, in a community where it already has very little value indeed. Whether the system is balanced, or whether it offers players the variety they seek, is a different matter entirely, and one that requires personal judgment. So far, we haven't even made it past the title without encountering issues. Let's try to make some progress. Let's start with your claim that, before they modified the attachment system, there are a lot of interesting ways to customize your weapon in Battlefield 4, both visually and to make your weapon perform better. There still are many ways, or rather, it's my opinion that there are, just as it is your opinion that there aren't. Before the update, the only barrel attachments I would ever use were the silencer, the heavy barrel, and the flash hider. To my knowledge, the compensator is only worth it for a very limited selection of guns, and the muzzle brake is a big no-no, as a vertical recoil is entirely predictable and counterable, while the spread is not. After the change, the only barrel attachments I ever use are the silencer, the heavy barrel, and the naked barrel. What a staggering change. As for the underbarrel attachments, before patch I used the potato grip or the vertical grip. I did use the angle grip, but I started to learn not to. Now after the patch, I still use the potato grip, but now I can use the bipod or even the underslug rail for those rare moments when I have a 40mm or an M26 mass instead of revive paddles or a med bag. To be honest, I don't use a vertical grip because I feel that the moving accuracy bonuses will not be as useful as, say, an outright spread increase reduction or getting a spread decrease buff. To me, accuracy at extended ranges tends to be more of a problem than moving accuracy. You then say that after the change you almost don't want to equip weapon attachments, and that you now run most of your guns without attachments because they shoot at their best without them. How am I meant to take the rest of this seriously? I mean, it's simply not true. It's clearly not true. Your weapons will shoot better when you are using a heavy barrel, and the only negative effect it has is increased vertical recoil, which is predictable and counterable. Your weapon may shoot better when using a potato grip or a vertical grip. It all depends on what weapon, and how you want to use them, and even where you use them. Weapons do not shoot at their best with no attachments. It's obvious. The only situation where you could argue that the heavy barrel would actually make your gun demonstrably worse is if you were playing on console with a weapon with recoil so high that to counter the said recoil with a heavy barrel attached, you would need to pull your joystick down lower than your controller physically allows on the max sensitivity. I don't even know if such a weapon exists. But that can't be your issue because I see you playing on PC. A bit later, you say that the main negative attribute applied to most of the attachments is this weapon spread increase or slower spread decrease. Now I asked around to be sure, and it would seem that not a single attachment got a spread alteration other than the stubby grip, and that change was beneficial. It takes away even more spread. There was no increase to either spread or spread increase for any of the attachments. Maybe you made a mistake and just meant to say slower spread decrease, but this is a fundamental mistake and there are fundamental differences between these two weapon mechanics. For those who don't know, the spread decrease reduction of 34% applies to all underbarrel grips, and 17% of a reduction applies to the flash hider. Even if I was to give you the benefit of the doubt on the spread increase mistake, you then say that the change effectively makes it so that your bullets just spray out in a larger pattern, being less accurate overall. That too is wrong. It's certainly an oversimplification where players could have done with a proper explanation. It further conflates spread increase with spread decrease. They are two completely different numbers with different implications. Spread increase defines how much each shot increases your weapon's spread. Spread decrease defines how fast your spread is lost after you stop firing. It plays absolutely no role while you are firing an automatic burst. Only once you pause or stop shooting does spread decrease become a factor. If you fire off a fully automatic 5-shot burst with any grip, the spread decrease change plays no factor in how accurate you are within the burst. At ranges where you can kill a target by spraying full auto, a spread decrease change makes little difference to an advanced player. If you aim well enough to not need to pause to reset spread before getting the kill, it won't be a factor in your accuracy. The spread decrease changes how long you need to wait between bursts for the spread increase to reset. To quote one of my sources, for most weapons it means wait one more frame between bursts than you did before. When you are measuring the extended time in a frame, i.e. a 30th of a second, I think we can all understand the severity of the change. I certainly wouldn't describe this as a really big negative effect as you have, and it certainly does not negate the positive effect the attachment brings. Next you say, and I quote, "Do you have to decide, do I want less recoil, but also less bullet accuracy? It's kind of a lose-lose situation there because you're making your weapon perceivably more accurate because you're experiencing less recoil, yet your shots are flying through the air and not hitting where you're aiming. It's a really bad way of balancing the weapon attachments." An attachment that matches this description would be that of the muzzle brake. It reduces vertical recoil and reduces accuracy. This is also one of the attachments that hasn't changed in terms of spread increase per shot or spread decrease, so anything that you think is wrong with this attachment has been wrong since its inception, since it has always had a spread increase reduction for less recoil. The same can be said for the compensator. The spread multiplier hasn't changed. The angle grip reduces first shot recoil, but as discussed earlier, it doesn't change the spread increase. It doesn't really make your gun less accurate, it forces you to extend the time between bursts in order to retain accuracy. Training wheel attachments like the muzzle brake have been in the game since the beginning, and there's nothing wrong with them. They offer easier handling at a trade-off of worse maximum performance. To offer better handling without worse performance really would be a really bad way to balance out the attachments. Because, without a trade-off, there would be little reason not to use such an attachment. There is always a trade-off. And on that note, let's get to where things start to get really strange. And you know what? Let's tackle the rest of the video as a whole. You essentially say that it's bad design to give weapon attachments disadvantages, that attachments should only have positives. You say that the naked barrel should instead be given the positive of faster ADS times to keep it viable, and that spread reductions should be removed. I'm speechless. It boggles the mind. It really does. You can only have one attachment equipped at a time. That means, in order for an attachment to have a unique benefit, then by definition, every other attachment has the disadvantage of not giving you that benefit, and preventing you from equipping the attachment that does. Disadvantages are part and parcel of the mutually exclusive attachment system. You haven't removed disadvantages by removing all the negative multipliers. Let me put it another way. If you have $100 and everyone else has what you have minus $10, then everybody else has $90 and you have what they have plus $10. Just because the system is stated without negatives doesn't mean that the system described is any different. You suggest that we have a system where each attachment simply has positives, and the naked barrel itself has its own positive. You have essentially described the current state of affairs with grip attachments, even though this is exactly the thing you have rejected as being bad. No grip has the advantage of having better spread decrease than any of the grips. Any advantage for a choice can also be expressed as disadvantage for all the other choices that lack that advantage. How can you not have realised this principle while making a video on attachments and their advantages and disadvantages? I can come up with only 3 explanations. Number 1. You failed to put in the basic thought and attention required to make this kind of video. Number 2. You lack the basic intelligence or education you would need to understand these things. I don't think that's very likely. Number 3. You're intending to be intentionally deceptive. Of course the advantage of no grip is stated as a disadvantage of all the grip choices. The no attachment state of a gun is the gun in its pure form. It is the base performance of the weapon upon which all the attachments and multipliers are based off. It is the reference point, the control group. And as the lack of attachments, I wouldn't be surprised if the engine doesn't have the capability to give a lack of attachments an actual modifier. Your alternative balance suggestion can be restated completely accurately as this. Number 1. Give the heavy barrel, silencer and naked barrel less spread advantage compared to the compensator and muzzle brake, while the recoil disadvantage stays exactly the same. Number 2. Remove the spread decrease advantage of having no grip. Number 3. Put a slow ADS time disadvantage on all the barrel attachments and grips. Everything you have suggested can be restated as a disadvantage and negatives, with exactly the same results. The two ways of stating things are synonymous. This way actually exposes the problem of your idea, which is that the heavy barrel user is rewarded less for adopting the disadvantage of high vertical recoil. He gets less spread disadvantage over the muzzle brake despite taking on exactly the same amount of recoil disadvantage as before. Naked barrel no longer becomes a happy medium between the heavy barrel's high recoil, high accuracy, and the muzzle brake's low recoil, low accuracy. The idea that this can be compensated for by ADS time reductions is at best simply an alternative balance idea with no more or less merit than the current system, and at worst, a pifflingly insignificant advantage which will still end up with people not using the naked barrel. If you have an issue with an attachment that gives you less spread for less recoil, then do what most others do and don't use it. Leave it alone, so that those who are new and need a gentle introduction to the recoil compensation can make use of it. Honestly, I don't know what to think at this point. I've heard multiple comments about you before watching this video. I was aware that there were people who weren't keen. Some of these people are my friends, but I understand that there are those who become jealous of success. And I can understand that people will adopt hipster attitudes of despising what is popular. And I've always chalked up the hatred to these things. Normally I don't watch popular Battlefield YouTube channels. The ones that I used to watch have all moved on to other things. But I assume there must be something good about LevelCap videos because they are almost always at the top of Battlefield YouTube search results. I went into this video expecting to find that you would have some opinions that my opinions didn't mesh with. But nothing had prepared me for this. I don't even know how you could have come to these conclusions. I don't even know how these could even sound like sense. Was this video some sort of test? Let's put out an absolutely incorrect suggestion and see if my viewers even notice. Did I pass? Is there a prize? I'm not the kind of person to hate. I don't think in good guys and bad guys. I think in problems and solutions. I'm not one for rushing to judge people. Ultimately, I'm not mad or angry at you for this video. Nor do I think you're a bad person. I'm not going to assume you're stupid. And I can't know if you're lazy. Maybe you weren't feeling too good. Maybe you're in a bad mood. Maybe life had not been good to you that day and it reflected in your video. I just don't know how this video happened. I'm confused. And I'm genuinely curious to know the answer. If you contacted me saying, "Sorry, my cat died and I wasn't thinking straight," then I'd be there saying, "It's fine, all sins forgiven." If you contacted me saying, "Sorry, I was under the influence of psychoactive drugs at the time," I'd be saying, "Oh, say no more. Blaze it 420, smoke weed every day, except recording day, please." Maybe you think that the real problem is that using negative multipliers is more confusing than positive ones, and you've decided to be deceptive and make the current attachment system sound worse than it is to try to effect change so that people would have an easier time dealing with the numbers. I don't think they are easier. The idea that attachment positives are more confusing than attachment negatives is to ignore the fact that negatives are still there even when each attachment only has positive modifiers. The negative is that you can't use alternative attachments. If anything, negative modifiers make things clearer by making the disadvantage visible. At the end of the day, you still have to examine the numbers to determine the true effectiveness of each attachment. I don't think we should be fighting to simplify the attachment system in that way, because it wouldn't be effective in its own goals. And I don't think it's right to baby players and assume that they can't deal with negatives. What we should be arguing for is better native display of attachment data, and indeed all gun data. You shouldn't have to go to Synthic to know what your attachment is actually doing. Accuracy plots should be part of Battlelog as standard. Players should be presented with all the tools they need to properly judge their attachments, right in the place they expect to find them. Either way, if deception was your intention, even for selfless goals, it's not right. If this is just a genuine screw-up, then this is no way to run a YouTube channel as popular as yours. You need to check your facts. You need to think through your suggestions and your complaints. Not because you are going to be more scrutinised, but because there are those out there who watch your channel that won't scrutinise, who take your word for it. If they take what you say on face value and campaign for it, at no point thinking it through, then you may well be causing them to campaign for things which are against their best interest. Many would say that you have to take responsibility for those people, and to take advantage of them is wrong. I think of it more as, if you take advantage of people, then in time they turn around and bite back. So if you won't do it for their sake, or for the good of Battlefield 4, do it for your own sake. Honestly, I don't expect an apology for this video. I wouldn't expect one from anyone. I doubt I'll get an answer to the question of how a video like this happened. But I'm satisfied enough as long as videos like this don't happen again. I'm happy as long as opinion is presented as opinion, and not fact. I'm happy as long as you start fact checking. And I'm happy as long as you give your suggestions and recommendations due care and attention, and make sure that they are as well thought out as can be. If this happens, there are no longer any problems as far as I can see. However, if it doesn't, I'll be back. And I hope this has been an educational experience for anyone else who is viewing this video. You cannot afford to delegate thought. The only person you can trust to think in your best interests is you. If you let someone think for you, they will make mistakes and they will manipulate. You must scrutinise other people's arguments. The world is full of people ready to take advantage of you. Now, I've been speaking for a while, and I think it's time for a well-deserved cup of tea. Yours sincerely, Dark Ethereal.